Hi, and welcome to the astrology that's going to be talking about the 4th of March, or leading up to the 4th of March, up to around the 11th of March. And that's going to encompass Mercury in retrograde, moving into Aquarius, and then turning direct on the 9th, moving into Aquarius on the 4th, turning direct in Aquarius on the 9th. We're going to have Venus moving into Taurus on the 4th. And then we're also going to have the full moon, the super full moon in Virgo on the 9th. Okay, so let's just talk about the Venus going into Taurus. Now, Venus going into Taurus on the 4th is going to be quite interesting because the Taurus is, as you know, it's the bull. We are going to be full on going after what we want. But with these two working together, and in the concept or the context of the retrograde, there might be a tendency for us to be just too possessive, too focused, and really wanting to go out and get whatever it is we really want to go out and get. Now, the difficulty with Aquarius laying over the Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, laying over this, and of course the sun in the constellation of Aquarius overlaying this, is Aquarius likes pleasure. Venus also is into pleasure, so we could be a little bit into instant gratification. I just want you to be really aware that we could be into instant gratification, and we could be very, very quick with our judgments about what we want, what we don't want, who's in and who's not in. And some of this is going to happen with absolute clarity. And I think that's really interesting coming on after we've had this new moon, which is having to look at these things we want to release and change. And I had some fabulous releases, and I know some other people had some fabulous releases, and a lot of aspects of uncertainty they were able to just release and get real grounding around an issue or a direction or a future. And I know I was able to do that. Just done a whole revamp of my website, refocused exactly what I want to do, and feeling happy. I have to apologize, someone is starting to build, but if you've been listening to these videos on and off, you would know that all of the building in my little town happens on the street. I'm not too sure why, but everything in this little town in Lao Luang happens on the street, including parties and including building. So that's what we've got. Hello, it's life. So please bear with the noise. So this is going to be quite an interesting time for us, and we will be making some decisions quite quickly. We might find, and this is going to be impacting on our boundaries a little bit, that people might be a little bit crossing these boundaries, and we're going to be very protective of them, and we might be withdrawing into our shell a little bit and starting to reposition how we perceive people and our relationship with people, and really having quite in-depth conversations with them about, no, that's actually not acceptable anymore. I need this, and I need you to be respectful of that. So we could be getting a little bit more aspect of that. Because one of the things about Venus in Taurus is that we might just get a little bit full of ourselves when it comes to conversations. We might just only want to be talking about ourselves. So just be mindful about our possessiveness, about time, about friendships, about possessions, about ideas, and all of those things. We just need to be a little bit careful about all of that. On the 9th in Aquarius, Mercury is going to go direct. So that's going to become very, very nice, because what's interesting about going direct in Aquarius, and particularly in Aquarius, is we're going to get our language skills back, and we're going to be able to articulate those things we need from people. So don't worry if you feel you haven't been able to have conversations with people, or in the middle of a conversation you've lost your train of thought and you haven't been able to then articulate exactly what it is that you want. That's also just part of this Mercury retrograde. That'll be coming into much clearer focus around the 9th and past the 9th. So if you need to have a big conversation with someone and you've got the time, I suggest you put it off until after the 9th. When you start to get more fluent. And the other thing about being more articulate is we're far more able to articulate the ideas. So there's been a lot of change and releasing happening, and I think I spoke to you a lot about this, is that we may not be necessarily fully aware of what's being released, but we will be noticing that there is a change. Now, sometimes we'll want to articulate that change, and after the 9th, we'll be able to do that. And sometimes what's going to happen now is we're going to try and articulate the change, and we're not able to because we actually don't understand fully what's happened, and we don't know the implications of that. So I talk about this a lot. Change happens on the spiritual and energetic plane well before the physical plane. So the next week or two, we're going to have the skills and we're going to have the time to be able to shed the light and talk about our transitioning and what's been happening and where we are now, and as a result of that, how things have changed for us and implications for that, particularly in relationships with others. And I think that's very, very nice. Just be aware the negative side of Venus and Taurus at this time is that we might become absolute pleasure seekers and looking for instant gratification. And we will want and we will demand tangible and physical expressions of love. So we will really be quite active. It's probably going to be a time of quite intense sexual gratification and sexual activity, and that's going to be really interesting for a lot of us, and I'm hoping it's really enjoyable for a lot of us. Let's hope. The other thing I want you to talk about is that Venus and Taurus, it's all about earthly goods, it's all about money, it's all about career, it's all about possessions. So those elements we might find ourselves getting very possessive about. When you get very possessive, just be aware that jealousy can rear its ugly head. And just ask yourself twice, is there really a need for me to be jealous about this, or am I just feeling super possessive right now? Because that's the flip side, isn't it, of being really possessive and focused on something, is we get really angsty if someone challenges our right to that or imposes themselves in what we perceive as ours, which is jealousy, and it's a little bit ugly. The other thing that might happen is you might be preferring objects to people, so just be aware of that. And what I mean by that is you might necessarily be feeling, there'll be times when you're really feeling social, and there's times when you're just not feeling social, so that's the other aspect of it. The other thing I'm going to let you know, in the first 5-6 days with Mercury retrograde in Venus and Venus in Taurus, Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, Venus in Taurus, is it's going to be a time for hard truths. And the truth, remember, will set you free. But hard truths are okay when we're ready for them. Hard truths are okay if we're looking for them. Hard truths are okay if they're coming from someone where we accept them from, where we acknowledge that they have something to say of value. But we're talking Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, so they could be coming from anywhere, and in particular, they could be coming from left field. And that could catch us unawares, and we may not be responsive to that because we talked about this possessiveness. So we're going to be quite possessive about our sense of the truth. We're not necessarily going to be that open to other people's sense of the truth. But unfortunately, we're going to be in a time where hard truths are going to be spoken. Aquarius is very fond of hard truths. Mercury in retrograde is very fond of hard truths. So we're going to have a week where we could be getting or coming across some statements, either ourselves or from other people, and they might be a little bit hard to swallow, but I want you to look at those things with a great deal of openness and compassion, and to not allow yourself to react from a position of possessiveness or fear of loss, because the opposite, possessiveness, is fear of loss, right? The only reason we become so possessive about something is we're actually afraid we're going to lose it. So that's one of the things I really want you to be aware of and thinking about, because that could really get you into some trouble, and you could really miss out on something that could really help you. That will be an enormous benefit to you in your life now. Now, full moon in Virgo on the 9th, and we're talking about a harvest moon, harvest full moon. It's the first of the supermoons. There are 3, March, April and May. They're all going to be in a nice row. And it's going to be, a supermoon is a very large moon because it's very, very close to the Earth in its cycle. Virgo is the planet of Earth. It's very earthly, so we're talking about the goddess of Earth. And I've been getting lots and lots of messages about Spirit of Place, so I think what I'll be doing is doing something about Spirit of Place very soon. It hasn't yet come to me fully, but I know next time I sit down and meditate, it'll come together in quite a clear statement, and I'll be able to give it to you. So I'll be looking forward to doing that. So we're talking about Mother Earth, but we're also talking about logical, practical, and systematic. So we are talking about harvesting, but what's the tempering of this with the harvest full moon? In the context, we'll be harvesting the ideas that we came to and the awareness that we came to with that new moon and the release from the new moon. And what's nice about this is that we'll be able to take those aspects that we've come together. We've got the language skills because Mercury is going to be going direct. We've got the love because Venus is going to be moving into Taurus, so there's going to be a lot of love around. And so what we're going to be able to do is to be able to take these ideas and articulate them and focus on them, and in a logical, practical, and very systematic way, make sense of it. And because it's harvesting, we are also going to be able to think about them in the long term. So this is not harvesting as in now. This is more like 7 of Pentacles, 8 of Pentacles, when we're thinking about long-term perspective. And this is what this new full moon is about. It is about harvest, but it's about thinking about the cycle of harvest and what long-term, how we can harvest, so long-term maintenance. So this is really about putting things together and build. We're going to be wanting safety, and this is going to work hand in hand with Venus and Taurus, but that's where I think we might be a little bit too possessive, or we might have a tendency to sort of batten down the hatches. And when it comes to spending money or investment or risk, we're going to be quite risk adverse. And we're going to be quite adverse to spending money, except for when we're in these moods of instant gratification. So I want you to be aware that anything that is a spontaneous buy in this environment, you are definitely going to have buyer's remorse. So, keep your wallet at the bottom of your bag. Keep it zipped, keep it closed, and don't reach for it too easily, because you really need to manage impulse buying and buyer's remorse, or impulse investing, or impulse risk taking. It's going to end. It's not going to give you the returns you think you're going to get. I mean, I really want you to think about it. Don't not do it, but really think about it before you do it. Don't do it impulsively. So even with our emotions, we want everything to be really ordered. And this is the Venus in Taurus. This is the full moon in Virgo, and it's completely at odds with the sun in the constellation of Aquarius. But on the 11th, the sun moves out of the constellation of Aquarius and into the constellation of Pisces. So this is going to work a lot better for us. So there could be some turbulence for a few days after this full moon. And then when the sun moves into the constellation of Pisces, and we're in the season of Pisces, so Pisces is doubling up, which is perfect, because there's going to be a much more compassion, and we're going to need this compassion, because part of the fallout from this full moon in Virgo with Venus in Taurus and the impact of the Mercury retrograde is that we're not going to be tolerant of imperfections. So we're going to have to really get a grip on this. We need to be very tolerant. We are imperfect. That is who we are. That's the human experience. It's not about being perfect. It's about loving and understanding our imperfections, and where we can, and where those imperfections work against our better good, our higher self, our authentic self, working to minimize the negativity from those imperfections, and that's what we want to have a look at. So we might be doing a lot of fault finding and looking for faults, and this is something I want you to be aware about with this full moon. But this full moon is definitely going to be showing us our imperfections. It's going to be showing us where we're a little bit too possessive about things. It's going to be showing us what we need to feel safe. And these are all really positive things. But of course, the downside of all of this can be that we feel a little bit too possessive. That's fear-based. And there's potential for there to be this underwriting current of fear. And what I want you to do if you're feeling fearful is just acknowledge the fear. And just go, it's okay, I'm feeling a bit fearful now, but I know it's okay. So it's going to be a time of hard truths, but remember, the truth will set you free, and that's going to be your mantra. The truth will set me free, and that's what I remember. The truth will set us free, and that's what I want you to be thinking about. And I want you to also acknowledge that imperfections within themselves can be really beautiful. So imperfections make us unique. Imperfections make me unique. And imperfections are often the essence of us. And that's what I want you to be thinking about with this full moon. All right. It's quite a lot happening, but it's a really nice way. We'll be able to get our plans in action. We'll be able to articulate far more about what we want. We'll get great clarity about what we need to be safe. We'll start putting in place, our long-term plans and really thinking about the harvest from all of that, the opportunities from all of that. And I think that's going to be really, really nice to see us turning these lofty dreams that we've been having into concrete plans and really starting to build ourselves up. Just be a little bit aware that if we become too fearful, if we become too possessive, then we're going to trip ourselves up. Okay, take care. I'll do the tarot and I'll talk soon. Bye-bye.